Chapter 15. Memnarch stood at the window of his laboratory. A light breeze rattled the jagged bits of glass, reaching through where the window had been to brush against his flesh. The cool air felt good against his hot skin, and he breathed it in, calming himself. Out in the interior of Mirrodin, the manacle crackled and sparked. It was pregnant with energy, and soon it would release it. Already the blue-white sphere had begun to take on a greenish tinge. Time was getting short. When the mana core finally did erupt, it would shake the foundations of the world, unleashing terrible force and temporarily unbalancing the perfection of Mirrodin. The perfection of Mirrodin. Memnarch shook his head. The perfection of Mirrodin, indeed. It was a myth. This world had never been perfect. Mirrodin had always had one fatal flaw. It wasn't a natural world. This plane, like so many others around the multiverse, was the creation of a planeswalker. But for all their magic and wisdom, the most powerful beings in all of Dominia had never been able to create stable worlds. Many a day had Memnarch stood and pondered this conundrum. His creator, his god, Khan, had the power to forge whole worlds from nothing more than a thought. Unless he stayed on his world, though, maintaining it through his own force of will, it would collapse, imploding like an overripe star. Khan had not been back to Mirrodin in a very long time. The stuff of perfection was unstable. Could something that did not last truly be considered perfect? Was there such a thing as temporary perfection? Memnarch hoped so. But what really boggled his much enhanced mind was the thought of natural worlds. If Khan could not create a stable world, then who could? There were worlds beyond this one. Many, many worlds, in fact. Memnarch had seen some of them. He had visited a few of them when the Creator had seen fit to take him along. These worlds did not collapse. They did not need a planeswalker to maintain their existence. This meant Memnarch's Creator had a creator. In fact, Khan had spoken of another planeswalker, a man named Urza, who had created him. But Memnarch's Creator had a creator, then perhaps that creator had a creator as well. And that creator likely had a creator, and he's a creator too. Could it really go on and on forever? There must be a starting point. One true creator. If that were true, then where did that creator come from? To be created. Memnarch's head hurt. He had been down this line of reasoning so many times, and each time he reached the very same point, the point at which he no longer cared to think about it any longer. That wasn't why his head hurt. It had been a long time since his last serum infusion. His mind ached for the lift, the joy, the mental strength that the infusion gave him. He turned his enhanced gaze back over the interior of the plane, trying to put that thought out of his mind. A giant blue-green spark arced through the air, hissing as it orbited the glowing orb. Then with a popping sound, the energy dived back into the surface of the mana core. The supercharged interior of the sun of Mirrodin had erupted exactly 4 times since its creation. Each time it had created one of the 4 moons. There was one for each colour: white, blue, black, red, but not green. Green would be next. When the time came, another lacuna would be created. The mana core would shoot out, a glowing ball of plasma, with the force and with such heat that it would burn straight through the mile-thick, solid metal crust of the plane. The new moon would breach the surface and rocket into the sky, joining the other 4 moons and falling into its natural orbit around the plane. Once the moon punched through the crust and shot off into the atmosphere, it would find its place among the other moons. Each of them would push or pull on it as if they were magnets. The moons would wobble back and forth, finally settling into its place among the others. Until that happened, the forces of nature would be terribly out of balance. First, the blink moths would disappear. There was nothing about the plane of Mirrodin that Memnarch did not understand, except where the blink moths went during the first moon cycle. He couldn't explain it. After witnessing the first 2 times, and being without serum for an entire moon cycle, he scoured the entire plane, inside and out. There was no logical place for them to go. They simply left Mirrodin. Memnarch was fully aware of the power of magic. He considered himself an accomplished spellcaster, but there were no spells to his knowledge that could move a creature from one plane to another. Only planeswalkers could do that. He doubted very much that the Blinkmoths were planeswalkers. Wherever they went, it was a mystery to Memnarch. The next noticeable change after the new lacuna would be the irregular moon orbits. As the green moon worked its way into natural rotation, the others would be pushed and pulled in and out of their own orbits. Days and nights would blend together. At first there would be 2 short periods of light, followed by 2 equally short periods of darkness. It would be a relief to the surface dwellers, after having endured the long, hot days and the pitch-black nights of the convergence. Still, the constant rising and setting of the moons would make sleep hard to come by, and it would put all of the wild animals in a frenzy. Their mating, hibernating, and hunting habits would be confused. That would all pass. Eventually, though, things would settle back into their normal rhythms. It always amused Memnarch to see how regular and predictable the organic creatures were. They loved their patterns and rituals. Everything needed to be just the way it always had been for the past generations. Of course, it never really was exactly the same. Things changed, slowly, imperceptibly to the mortal folk. That was the beauty of evolution. Things improved, much like Memnarch had improved himself. There was devolution as well. Whatever had caused the microsynth growths had also caused what Memnarch referred to as the spore. The spore was a virus. It attacked metal, got into places it shouldn't be, and broke things down. The spore tarnished what little perfection Memnarch had to hold on to. It caused flesh to evolve into metal. It caused metal to devolve into flesh. Memnarch suspected that the spore existed for a very long time, but he couldn't be sure. He assumed that it had appeared after Master Khan had left Mirrodin. A planeswalker would have noticed such a virus in his own plane and eradicated it. He also knew that the spore either originated in the mana core or was fed by the waves of energy it gave off. The microsynth only grew on the interior of the plane, and each of the towering chrome spires reached towards the glowing blue-white orb, grabbing for it like greedy fingers. After time passed, Memnarch ever so slowly had become more fleshy. He could only hope that when he ascended, found a spark and became a planeswalker, that he would then be able to overcome the effects of the spore and destroy them before they destroyed the plane. That was where the elf girl came in. She had the spark, the vital piece of a person's soul, the 1 in a million difference that made her capable of becoming a planeswalker. Given the right circumstances, she could ascend herself. Master Khan had once spoken of ascending. He had told Memnarch of how it had happened during a terrible fight on another world. Before the creator had become a god, he had been a metal golem, a creation just like Memnarch. In the story, Master Khan spoke of an invasion of his homeworld by a sickness. He called it the Phyrexian Plague. Memnarch knew nothing more about it, but he imagined it was much like the microsynth and the resulting spore here on Mirrodin. The plague had taken hold of the world to such an extent that Khan and his master had been forced to build a last-ditch weapon, one that required them to sacrifice themselves in order to use it. Both creator and creation willingly sacrificed themselves for the good of those left on the plane. While the blast of the weapon vaporized the planeswalker creator, it did something different to the metal golem Khan. Maybe it was the trauma of being seared by a beam of holy light so powerful it could cleanse an entire planet of a virulent plague in one blast, or maybe it was the heroic action the metal golem had taken. Whatever the cause, Master Khan ascended. His metal golem body was destroyed in the blast, but a new body was formed. One of quicksilver. One that, with just a thought, could walk among the stars. Memnarch smiled at the thought. That was what he was planning to do. Vaporize his own body and become a planeswalker. He did not have a super weapon, but he had something just as good. The mana core. When the green moon was birthed from the surface of the interior sun, it would strike the shell of the plane and burn its way out. Using the information he collected from the other moons, Memnarch had pinpointed the exact location of where the eruption would occur. He had built the panopticon precisely on top of the spot. The eruption would provide the catastrophic power needed to destroy Memnarch's body. He'd have the elf girl with him when the blast hit his tower, and just like Master Khan, the planeswalker would perish, and the created metal man would ascend. A perfect plan, he said. Turning away from the broken window, Memnarch made his way over to the Darksteel Eye, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elf girl. Marek walked through the curved interiors of Lumengrid, on his way to finalize his preparations to leave with Pontifex. Taking a sharp corner, he nearly ran straight into Councillor Orland.
"Whoa," said the councillor, losing his balance. "Marek, what are you doing? Why are you off in such a hurry?" "Excuse me, councillor. Please forgive my haste."
He bowed and stepped around Orland. The councillor reached his arm out, blocking Marek's path.
"Must you go so soon?"
Marek looked back over his shoulder, but the corridor was clear.
"We should not be seen together," he said.
Orland smiled.
"Relax, Marek. There's nothing odd about a member of the Synod talking to a guardsman."
Marek checked the hallway.
"You know as well as I do that Pontifex did not get where he was by being careless and overly trusting."
He gave Orland a cold stare.
"Even with my years of service, do not lift me above his scrutiny."
He looked at the councillor over from head to toe.
"You risk my life by detaining me."
Orland looked surprised.
"It was quite by accident that I have run into you here, Marek."
The councillor flashed a winning smile.
"I was just on my way to see Councillor Sodador."
He pointed behind Marek.
"Yes, I am aware of where Councillor Sodador resides, Orland. Don't treat me like a fool or waste my time. This meeting was no accident, so tell me what it is you want."
Orland nodded.
"Yes, forgive me,"
lowering his forehead. The councillor looked up, past the ridges of his creased brow.
"I have it on good authority that you, my friend, would like to see the Synod dissolve, and the Vidalcan people rule themselves." "Where did you hear that?"
Orland smiled.
"A little squid told me." "Is that so?"
The councillor nodded.
"It is, but I don't put much stock in rumors, so I came to find out for myself."
Marek straightened himself up, standing to attention.
"You have the wrong Vidalcan, councillor."
Now it was Orland's turn to look Marek over from head to toe.
"I don't think I do. No, I think it's a man who spent his life protecting the Vidalcan Empire's ruling class that may have seen a thing or two. Someone like that might have his reason to want to see a change in the way things are done."
Marek softened.
"And?"
Orland smiled.
"And all I need to know, when the time comes, can I count on you, Marek?"
The councillor leaned in closer to the warrior.
"Are you willing to fight for yourself as hard as you fought for Long Pontifex?"